disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO classified. UFO classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Welcome to UFO Classified. I'm Erica Lukes. I was happy to be here on KCOR on a Friday evening, and judging by some of your comments in the UFO Classified chat, you're experiencing weather that is just not as mild as mine, and I want to make you a little bit jealous, but I am today in Salt Lake. It has been very beautiful and in the 40s. I love it here, and it's almost time for me to start getting out again and going back to the Uinta Basin, doing some more field research, which I look forward to. I have been a busy girl this week, as you know, not only running a business and having a life, but also devoting many hours to researching UFOs and archiving the history. I have the Utah UFO Archive, which is open to the public. I have just received yet another collection from a researcher, and will be sharing updates with regard to that. I'm very happy to say that this is a good home. If any of you know researchers who are passing their work on, please make sure that they don't donate them to MUFON, where they will go into the black hole, never to be seen again, or B, donate them to a university where researchers like myself have limited access. You actually have to travel to the university itself and spend time there digging through the archives. So if we can get archives to researchers like Fran Ridge, like Barry Greenwood, Jan Aldrich, myself, who are going to scan and make the files available to the public, that is an ideal way to go. So there you have that little spiel. I spent this afternoon talking to my dear friend, Gordon Lohr, who wrote the book Flying Saucers from Beyond the Earth, the UFO Researcher's Odyssey. And he worked with NICAP. He's been on the show a few times, wrote Strange Effects from UFOs back in the 60s, late 60s for NICAP. Very important. And I want to just read what he put in the book to me. He says, Erica Lukes, you are the queen of ufologists. Bless you for all the good things you are doing for all of us. And that means the world to me. Gordon and I are working on a project together, and I want to give him a shout out. If you don't have that book, please go to Bear Manor Media and get the book and support Gordon. As we know, this field is full of controversy. And whether you're here in America, it's completely a different animal, or whether you're over in the UK, you are in the thick of things. And try as we might as researchers, people who understand there is something real, it is tangible, it deserves to be studied. Oftentimes we get involved with the drama of personalities, of it getting pulled into disinformation, and also frail egos. We're going to talk a lot about that tonight, because my guest this evening, who has stayed up very late over there with his two babies, is Gary Heseltine, and he's been on the show before. I really enjoy Gary. He's a great researcher. He was born in 1960 in Lincolnshire. He served in the Royal Air Force Police from 83 to 89 before spending 24 years in the British Transport Police. Gary was a Home Office trained detective constable for 19 years, working on murder, manslaughter, rape, all sorts of very difficult things. He was an advanced police interviewer of witnesses and suspects, and involved in the London bombings terrorist inquiry as a specialist interviewer of first responding police officers. In 2002, while serving as a police officer, he launched an unofficial national database for police officers reporting UFO sightings in the UK. I will be providing links to that. Following the sudden death of UFO Magazine's editor Graham Birdsall in 2003, Gary stepped up to the plate and launched his own online e-zine called UFOmonthly.com. It's great. I always love reading it, lots of things, and it's exciting to see different research from all over the world. I think that's important. He spent 12 months as the co-editor of UFO Data magazine, and in 2010 was presented with the PRG World Disclosure Award in Washington, D.C. by Steve Bassett. In 2012, he was given the Exopolitics Great Britain Award. He is also a leading researcher with regard to Rendlesham Forest, which, as we all know, is Britain's most famous UFO case. He is currently the lead researcher and co-writer of a major independent feature-length documentary, which we are going to talk more about. There's been some controversy with regard to this film, and again, people rearing their heads, but Gary is one of the best researchers, investigators, and I know that, Gary, welcome to the show. I thank you for staying up late, first of all, and I know that you have been very public about trolls and about some of the slander that we've seen in the field, and I know with your new movie, which I want to hear all about, that has most certainly been top on the agenda for certain people. And I'm sorry that you've had to go through that.
Oh, you want me to speak now?
Absolutely. Now's your turn. You're using your Sean Connery.
Your tones were sending me there. It's late, you see. So I'm just nicely nodding off there in the nicest possible way. No, thank you for having me back as a guest. No doubt after this you'll not ask me back again. But no, I know it's nice to be back. And right, on a serious note, the trolling that I've experienced over the last 2 years is horrendous. But it's done by only a very small minority, but a minority that are a bit like a hornet's nest. They're an irritant, but it's only about 50 people. But these people have been given license by the failure of the Facebook platform to police itself. And, you know, the things that they have said about me, other people involved in Capel Green, you know, I'm a liar, a con man, I'm a this, that, and the other. They're swearing at me and this, that, and the other. And you have to distance yourself away with it. But what it says to me is that when people like Nick Pope say I should be arrested for making the documentary about Rendlesham Forest, that says to me, why are you getting so nasty? I must be getting pretty close to revealing things that some people would not have revealed. And I think that's really what it's all about. There is definitely a campaign or an ongoing campaign to downplay, to discredit, to make people think that I'm perpetrated a hoax on the UFO community, which is exactly what Nick Pope has said repeatedly. But you've got to ask yourself, why would I do that? Why would I strive since 2002 going public, and having been a police officer for pretty much all of my adult life, why would I purposely put a fraud on the UFO community if it wasn't something that I believed in? Now, I think having 30 years collective police experience, that I know the evidence actually a little bit better than Nick Pope did, who sat in a desk and never actually got out. So from my point of view, I know what evidence is, and the evidence that I have accumulated over the last 18 months has surprised me, both in terms of old information and a lot of new information. And what I can say is that I can't wait to have the film released, because it is going to totally open up Rendlesham in a way that the public have never seen it before.
And it looks, from the trailers that I've seen, it looks like a beautifully put together film. And so congratulations on that. And I know that Yes, you have had your share of critics. Nick Pope, as you mentioned, is top on that list. There are there's a lot of feedback about Larry Warren, who is the centerpiece of the film, and you either support him or people think that he's a hoaxer, a fraudster, and I'm sure that
let me just step in there.
Absolutely.
Let's look at the premise from the off. Why would I, like I was just saying, risk my reputation to protect somebody who was a fraudster? And the answer is I wouldn't. So do I think he's a fraudster? No, I don't. Have I got the evidence to say he was in the forest? Yes, I have. Multiple. And this will all come out in the film. So whatever these people try to claim is a distortion of the truth. And let's just touch on Peter Robbins. In the sense, Peter and I had known each other for a long time. We were always friends. But over this, sadly, he is attacking me. Now, let's just clear up something. I know for a fact that Peter Robbins still thinks Larry Warren was in the forest. And why do I know that? Because he's emailed me and told me that privately. So whatever you hear on regards to Rendlesham Forest, Peter still thinks he was in the field. So don't ever get that into your head. There are the reasons that are put out for their separation are largely, shall I say, in my opinion, Peter, before I got involved in this film project, which just came out of nowhere, and I was unaware quite of the state of their deteriorating relationship, shall we say. I knew it was a kind of love-hate relationship after 28 years, but I'd met them jointly and separately on many occasions, and never a problem. But what I think has happened to Peter, and I think it's quite sad, is that at the time, just before I got involved in this project, I think Peter had been, shall we say, persuaded by the trolls, well, the leader of the troll, the female leader of the trolls, and her evidence seemed to convince him that their relationship of 28 years was actually nothing more than a sham. Well, I would argue that that was not the case, but I think he was essentially bullied into choosing a side. Either you're on the troll side and he's going down, or I kind of saved my reputation from his point of view. And I think that he, fearing that Larry Warren was going down because the trolls had said the evidence was so good that this man's going to be arrested for fraud, this, that, and the other. He's a liar, a con man, and a cheat. Their evidence was so good that the man was going down. So I think before he went down, I think Peter, sadly, after 28 years and writing 3 books about him and defending him so much for 28 years, suddenly thought, oh, hang on a minute, this guy's going down, the evidence is bad. Not that he understood, I think, really what the true level of what evidence is. So anyway, he was persuaded, and I think he jumped ship to protect his own reputation, which I think is not the greatest act. And I think he will come back to bite him, because the film will present so much good evidence to say that what happened in the field and for the thing that he backed for 28 years was true, that he jumped too soon, put it that way.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I know that there's so many. This is a very raw subject, and I know Peter is a friend of mine, and I know that he has been quite. This hasn't been an easy thing for him. It's been really hard on him, and I think that he is a very genuinely kind person, and he very much felt like, and I will hopefully I'm speaking for him correctly, that he did he believed in Larry, and he was let down for whatever reason. And I would love to have both of you on the show, so maybe you can talk about these things, because you both were friends for a long time.
Absolutely, but realistically, there would be no point in doing that until after the film is out, because that's when I can freely talk about all the things that I've discovered and put together. So realistically, that could happen after, but not before.
Oh, that would be great. That would really actually mean a lot to me to have both of you on the show together, because I consider both of you my friends and respected colleagues. And I want to go back for people that aren't aware of, and it seems hard to believe that anybody wouldn't be aware of Rendlesham Forest and the incidents, the things that happened in December. If you could briefly give us a rundown on that so people that are new to the subject have information.
All right, well, I'll base it on the existing pre-Capel Green scenario. What I mean is that I'll do it based before this new information comes out. The accepted story is that over at least 3 successive nights in late December, popularly described as Christmas night into Boxing Day, being the first night, the 26th into the 27th, and then the 27th into the 28th. Significantly, the first night is described as the halt, is the Penistone and Burrows Cabanzac event, where they go off the sea lights near the East Gate. They get permission, they go off in the forest. Eventually, if you listen to Jim Penistone, 2 go forward, he and Burrows. If you listen to Burrows, it's all 3 of them, Cabanzac, Burrows and Penistone, all go forward. Eventually find what Jim Penistone describes as a triangular small craft, 3 meters by 3 meters, at or close to the ground, in a clearing in the forest. If you listen to John Burrows, then he will never describe it as a craft, as a mechanical machine. He will see it more as a bank of lights, and he will say that Cabanzac was there as well. I'm not too worried about who was there, who was not, really, because I think time distortions, the very nature of what you're dealing with, is not something like just going to the shop. This is a profound experience. Everybody's perceptions are all going to be slightly different, and I think we're dealing with a very strange subject where the mind, as we know from UFO research, can be manipulated when in close proximity to a genuine ET UFO. So I don't bog down in that, but that's essentially the first night that there was a landed craft, and then the second night, much less well known, we believe is the Lieutenant Bonnie Tamplin, a shift commander, who saw something that was so that made her so distraught that she was screaming over the radio, "Help me, help me!" And she had to be picked up by, believed to be Sergeant Ball, and she was never able to go back on shift. She was so traumatized by whatever she saw, and she was quickly shipped back to the United States. And then on the third night, which is regarded as the third night, there could be 4 nights, we can talk about that later, but essentially the accepted, this is where Colonel Holt, who most people will be aware of, what's called the Holt Memorandum, which was a document that surfaced in 1983 that was never meant to ever surface, and it did. And basically that led, that 3 paragraphs basically told of, 1, the landed on the first night with Penistone, Burrows and Cabanzac, and then it mentions in the 3rd paragraph that a UFO is seen in the forest again on what is classed as the 3rd night, and basically Holt goes out with a team to debunk it, but unfortunately, whilst at the original landing site from 2 nights earlier, they see an object and they have multiple UFO experiences themselves. So Holt, who was then a lieutenant colonel, deputy base commander of what was a nuclear strike base, he thus became involved when he saw multiple UFOs himself, and hence why he was required to write the memo, because it had happened on British soil, and he was told that he had to notify the the British Ministry of Defence. Hence why he wrote a memo on the 13th of January with just these 3 paragraphs. It was never a detailed report, and he will say that it was meant to be just like a little précis note, and he anticipated that the British would get involved in an inquiry. He will say that they didn't. The truth of that, I don't think anybody really knows, and we can discuss that in other areas. But essentially, those are your 3 nights. Now, on the 3rd night, as well as the Holt night, where the controversy comes in, is because the original military whistleblower was, despite whatever anybody tried to say, was Larry Warren. He was the first person to put his name out there way before Holt, way before Pennison Burroughs, because they were still serving. He'd come out the Air Force, and he went public really from 1983 onwards, although he began discussing it in 82 onwards with Bob and Betty Luca. If you think of Betty Andreasen, the abduction case, the contact case she had, the Andreasen affair, the famous book, well, he got to know them, told them about the story, and this was 82, and basically they said, well, we know a Connecticut detective called Larry Fawcett, who was in the process of writing a book with Barry Greenwood, and basically Bob and Betty put him in touch with Larry Fawcett. Larry Fawcett interviewed Larry Warren. Larry Warren was prepared to go on the record. Larry Fawcett came up with a pseudonym name, Art Wallace, which was originally used in the big famous 2-page special News of the World splash in the newspapers that went worldwide in October of 1983, which announced it to the mainstream world, although it was known well before that in UFO circles. But that's when it really hit the national media and then international media. And really, because Larry Fawcett had an account from a military witness, that information was fed into Coase put in the request, and when the Air Force did a trawl of documents regarding Rendlesham Forest, surprisingly, and nobody realised this was going to happen, it was a complete fluke really, but based on the strength of having an actual witness who was prepared to go public, that then threw up the Holt Memorandum, and that's how the Holt Memo came out. Larry Warren certainly didn't know that there was a Holt Memorandum. Why would he? He was an airman first class. He was the lowest of the low. He'd only recently joined the Air Force, not many months earlier. So he had no rank. He would not know of any documents being written. But the kind of side effect of him talking to Larry Fawcett and going on the record and being prepared to go public was that they did a trawl, and suddenly this Holt Memo cropped up, I think, in about May, June of 1983.
And I've got to cut you off right there. And then, of course, right at the good part, we've got to take a break. Just really quickly, where can people find out about your film so they can watch the trailer as well?
All they have to do is put in www.capelgreen, as one word, CAPEL, green as in colour, capelgreen.co.uk, and there will be 4 trailers on there. And I think you're going to put the links up, you said, at the end of the show. So that will be great.
Thank you. Great. We'll talk more about that, and we'll continue the story when we get back. America Lukes here with Gary Heseltine. Stick around.
Stand by. This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes. Erica Lukes. The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified. UFO Classified with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
Hello, KCOR listeners. Lorian Fenton here, inviting you to join me at UFO MegaCon, a new 7-day and 8-night immersion event from the original producers of the world's largest and longest UFO conferences in recent history. There will be 50 speakers, UFO military witness whistleblowers, award-winning filmmakers, and special guests discussing all things UFO, alien, and disclosure. UFO MegaCon will premiere never-heard-before speakers bringing you new and amazing information. There will be experiencer group Skywatch's musical entertainment and even a game show with George Norrie. Join me at UFO MegaCon March 24th through 30th in Laughlin, Nevada. Truly the one and only conference you need to attend this year. Check it out at UFOMegaCon.com. That's UFOMegaCon.com.
Now, broadcasting in digital HD radio.
Toxins are everywhere, from the air we breathe to the food we eat and the water we drink. In a world where 80,000 known toxins and heavy metals threaten our very existence, how are you going to protect yourself and your loved ones? Introducing Pure Body Extra Strength, the world's first colloidal zeolite that helps trap and remove toxins as well as heavy metals from your body that are messing with your memory, clarity, sleep, and focus. Don't just take our word for it or the testimonials from our thousands of happy customers. Check out the hundreds of articles and case studies on the National Institute of Health website proving zeolite's powerful ability to remove toxins. For a limited time, listeners to KCOR will receive 10% off their first order. To get started, go to trypurebody.com and enter promo code RADIO10. Again, that's trypurebody.com. Toxic junk is all around us, but now you can take back control of your health and protect yourself by detoxing with Pure Body Extra Strength. You'll be on your way to sleeping better, thinking more clearly, and feeling more energetic. Go to trypurebody.com right now and get started today.
We interrupt this program to annoy you and make things generally irritating.
At the end of the day, we turn the lights down in the KCOR studio.
Oh, sweet.
And crank up the hottest club songs from around the world.
This is the future.
The Grind, mixed by Tina Marie, your Vegas vixen of the high desert.
What about the body? What kind of body?
Good body. Nice body.
Every night from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Pacific. The best 3 hours of commercial-free music.
New music first.
It's time to stand up and dance your ass off. The Grind, nightly and exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Come on, it's kind of hot.
Are you ready to go?
It's showtime!
You're listening to the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Break this up.
Broadcasting from the heart of Las Vegas, Nevada.
Their base is so large it has to draw most of its power from the nearby nuclear fusion plant.
The future of radio is here and now.
You're listening to
UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts!
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back. I'm Erica Lukes here on Friday evening on the best digital broadcasting network, KCOR. I want to give a big thanks to Tina Marie, who is the station owner, and my producer, who runs a very tight and professional ship. I appreciate everything that she does to keep this station very reputable. I appreciate that, and to support hosts. And I wanted to just also give a shout out to Northern UFOs, who does an incredible job. I appreciate all of the people that support the show, that spread the word, that donate to the show. I am here every week paying for the privilege to give you this information, because I believe it is that important, and there are people out there who are supporting that effort, and you are greatly appreciated. Tonight I'm here with one of my friends across the pond, Gary Heseltine, who has got a brand new feature-length documentary movie out about Rendlesham Forest. We'll be giving updates on that. He has been also very active for decades with regard to this, and he hosts an event in the UK. And Gary, I have to tell you, I was told by Nick Redfern to tell you that you better get me over to the UK.
I know you're angling to get over, but you'll just have to keep buttering me up.
Okay, well, you know, and I want to just throw this out there. I've got some pretty good stuff
I mean,
about
don't
skinning
forget, I'm
for
an
rain.
Irish man, so if you use a bit of corruption, I'm sure you might get over it.
Oh dear. Well, I just had to throw that out there, so I'm sure Nick will be laughing. But it's you do a great deal of work over in the UK, and I think that's impressive that you organize such great events and have a wonderful publication for all of us. Again, I'll be posting those links and add them permanently on my website, and that is much appreciated. I think it's been interesting to follow your career and to see your pursuit and your ups and downs, especially with regard to Rendlesham, which is the most famous, but that and Roswell UFO case in the world, and it is also there's a lot of drama there.
Well, let's put it this way. I went public with my research with police officers from 2002 onward, and basically never had a problem with anybody within the UFO community right the way through until 2015. And then over one case, the Rendlesham Forest case, and everything that has happened, certainly in the UK, with the trolling aspect, that has changed considerably. So it has become a terribly divisive case, and it shouldn't be, because it is such a good case. But there are, without a shadow of a doubt, and I can prove it with written evidence in a document that I prepared called Winter is Here. And if anybody wants to email me at heseltinegary@hotmail.com, I will gladly send them a 14-page PDF on my research into the trolls and the campaign and who's behind it, using their own words from screen grabs on their own sites. So that's there. It's a matter of fact that there is an ongoing campaign to discredit, first of all, Larry Warren, and then it was anybody that was going to stick up for Larry Warren. Well, I'd met Larry Warren many times over the years. I didn't class us as friends. I didn't know him well enough to class as friends. We were friendly when we met, but we would never really talk or anything. You'd just see him at the odd conference, something like that. I got to know him a little bit better when I went to Laughlin in 2010 for the last Bob and Terry Brown one, before it went over to, I think, Phoenix. So that was the week-long event in 2010. And he happened to be on the same plane, so I got a chance to spend time with him. And because the event was there for a week, I obviously spent a fair bit of time with him. But realistically, as an advanced interviewer and as a former detective, and at the time I was still a serving detective, you'd kind of develop a nose for when somebody's lying to you. But with the advanced interview training I'd had on psychological profiles, body language, non-verbal communications, things like that, I discussed his events, the Capel Green scenario, which I'll explain in a second, on several occasions. But I'd also seen him being asked by multiple people, grabbing him at conferences, and I always found him extremely detailed in his responses, which is very unlike someone if you're a liar. Believe it or not, it's actually hard to lie consistently, and it's hard to lie consistently over a period of time when you're asked many hundreds, if not thousands of times over that kind of 30-odd year period that we're now talking about. But whenever I'd heard him speak, I always thought, without a shadow of a doubt, this guy's suffered some trauma, and you can only get that trauma if you've actually been there and experienced something. You cannot, as some people would try to say, oh, well, he borrowed Sergeant Adrian Bustinza's story. No, he didn't. And it's quite clear when you put the evidence side by side of their various interviews over the years that they were both there and they both had slightly different accounts. Well, somebody who was just trying to put himself in the story would do everything to match to match the story that they're trying to fit, because they weren't there, supposedly. Well, in reality, Larry Warren, and bear in mind, he was the first person to go public and was on his own for many years before the other parties that we now associate on TV, Holt, Penniston, and Burroughs. They're the three principals that are out there in every documentary. Well, I can guarantee you that after Capel Green comes out, there'll be many more people being interviewed, and that's as it should be. And that, during the course of my research over the last 18 months, I've spoken to many witnesses, and many still will not go public because of the way they have seen what they say to me is the farce that's going on now with Holt, Penniston and Burroughs. And that's not to discredit them, but they say that it's not just about Holt, Penniston and Burroughs, and it's become that kind of a show to them on TV. And what people in the wings are saying is they're kind of giving a distorted view, and there was a lot more going on. And I think that this is aspects that will be borne out in the documentary when it comes out. There's obviously a lot of stuff that I still can't say, and I think probably the director's listening, Dion, if you are. I'm not going to give away all the secrets, but I can certainly say that we've got many, many revelations that will come out that will broaden this and bring a lot more people in, and I think it will also give a kind of a real flavour of the chaos and the absolute totally not organised, total chaos response alert kind of situation that was going on, certainly by the third night when Larry Warren got involved. And just before the break, you asked me to set out what were the 3 nights. Well, I've done that up to the point that Colonel Holt went out there to debunk it, saw multiple UFOs himself. The one side that I haven't discussed, which is actually the first one to come out, because it was Larry Warren's account, and is it controversial? Yes, you're damn right it's controversial. And I say this because if Larry Warren's Capel Green scenario is true, and I will say that it is true, and the film will show that it's true, then the American government would not want that information to get out. The British government would not want that information to get out. The British military, Ministry of Defence would not want that to get out, and nor would the American military want that to get out. So what is the big secret that they don't want to get out? Well, I would say that the Capel Green scenario that is happening around the same time as Holt is out there with his team. It's all in a very, very small geographical area. And for those people who have been, and I take people around, I say it's a bit like a tabletop exercise. In reality, once you know where all the things are that have occurred, or allegedly occurred, then it's actually a very, very small geographical area. And so things are happening at the same time in some part of the forest or fields nearby. And I think this is one of the things that we will begin to show in Capel Green is the logistics. And because we're using a lot of drone footage in 4K, which is absolutely stunning quality, we're going to give an aerial perspective that's never been shown in any documentary. And it needs to be shown because you will begin to see what a very small area all these things take place in, a relatively small area. So what is the Capel Green scenario? What is this controversial scenario that Larry Warren painted and described when the news first hit the public world press, and that was in October 1983, News of the World? Well, what he said was he was a young airman, had only just arrived at the base a few weeks earlier, it does appear that his training, he got through his training quicker, but there may be reasons that will be discussed in the documentary why certain people at the Christmas time maybe were put on shift quicker than ordinarily would have been. but he was there, and we'll have witnesses that say he was there. And so basically what he will say is that he is initially, on this same night that Holt goes out, he is at a one-person perimeter post near the edge perimeter of the base, perimeter post 18, and then he begins to hear radio chatter that there's something going on in the woods. The next thing is that there's a vehicle turning up, and he's told to get in, close down your post on the radio. You're closing it down, come with us. He's then taken onto the Woodbridge base to get more light holes. They then go off into the forest, and he gets to the end of where the vehicles can go, where they can't go any further because it's forest. They then go out on foot. He then gets separated into a small group. And he's never been in the forest. He doesn't know where he's going. He's still thinking, is this an exercise? What's going on? But eventually he is with a small group that go to what turns out to be through the forest until they find themselves at the edge of what is called a farmer's field. And it's just a field. And across the other side, approximately 300 metres away, opposite is a farmhouse with a light on upstairs in the bedroom window. This is the early hours of the morning. And basically what he sees at the edge of the farmer's field is a strange ground-hugging yellow greenish mist that's maybe 1 to 2 feet off the ground, approximately 50 feet in diameter. But what he also sees is that there are security police out in the field already. He sees that on the right side there is a tripod with a video camera and also somebody filming on a cine camera, which is pretty weird because 1980 early videos, there were about the big gigantic ones that were like the big old-fashioned cameras that you see on a shoulder. One was on a tripod, so that was probably the video, and maybe a cine film was being filmed handheld. But suffice to say, he also says that there were 2 British police officers, i.e. civilian police officers wearing their would-be black uniform on the edge of the field. And then suddenly, as he is told to go into the field, basically somebody says over the radio, here it comes, and then he sees a small red light come from the direction of what is the North Sea, which was approximately from their location just a good 2-3 miles away as the crow flies, and the object came and stopped directly above the yellow mist. And then suddenly there's an explosion of light. Everybody is kind of rubbing their eyes, a huge shower of light sparks. And then when their eyes readjust, where the mist had been, there is some kind of craft where the mist had been. And this craft is described as being kind of a triangular dome, but you can't look at it straight on. It's like distorting. You have to look at it through your peripheral vision. It's kind of translucent, a bit shimmering. You can't look directly at it. But there is a craft there that's described as about 30 feet wide, where the mist had been. Now, the story is kind of amazing already up to that point, but it gets even more amazing because as the security police are kind of like in a circle around this object, then basically what Larry Warren will describe is something slipped off, akin to a bubble, somebody blowing a bubble slipped off the fabric of the side of the craft, and inside that one bubble, it then separated into 3 separate bubbles, and within each of the bubbles there is some kind of upper body torso of some kind of entity. And it does sound like science fiction. And this is where it gets even stranger, because you've got this scenario, and then, amazingly, so you've got 3, as it were, floating strange entities, and then senior officers believed to be the base commander, Colonel Williams, who was always denied he was ever involved, but that'll be interesting in the documentary. That's all I will say on that at this stage. A group of senior officers walk into the field. They don't drive into the field because there's no access to drive into the field. They walk across the farmer's field to where this is taking place. And amazingly, whoever it is, a group of senior officers, and really it doesn't matter too much who the names are, but senior officers arrive, perhaps 5 or 6, and one of them at the group moves closer towards these entities that are floating next to the craft, and there is some kind of silent communication, or nothing could be heard. Larry doesn't hear anything heard verbally, but there appears to be a face-off. Now, as crazy as that situation sounds, and believe it or not, there's a lot of corroboration to say that happened, which surprised me when I actually delved into the case. There was a lot of corroboration to say that scenario happened. When that situation occurred, you are thinking, what is going on? I mean, if it was the base commander, Colonel Williams, then it's the base commander of a nuclear strike base. And we can talk about nuclear weapons later on if you want the significance of that, because I think this is personally what I think it was all about. Nuclear weapons, checking out the weapons storage area at RAF Bentwaters, that essentially contain more nuclear weapons than anywhere else in Europe. And why do I know that? Because Colonel Holt told me that twice, one of which was heard by my wife, who will corroborate that on camera in this, because she's got a trigger memory that I didn't know she had as to why she remembered him saying that. So that will be in the film as well. But suffice to say that if that scenario was true, that the base commander of a nuclear strike base was in a field having some kind of face-off with 3 floating entities, and essentially what most people would describe as a spacecraft or a craft of unknown origin, then you can understand why the Americans wouldn't want that to get out. You can understand why the British wouldn't want that to get out. And you can understand why, and if we think of whistleblowers per se, if you think of Edward Snowden, things don't go well for you. If you think of Julian Assange, things don't go well for you if you're a whistleblower. And that's the way of the world. People do not want secrets to get out. And I understand the nature of secrets. I was in the Air Force, and I understand the classification system and whatever. But essentially, I think that is the big secret, and hence why Larry Warren has to be vilified, and he certainly has paid a heavy price for all his life for saying that and going public. But he has maintained it steadfastly for all these years, and I've heard him say it many, many times. And let's just cut to the chase here. When I was approached by the director of Capel Green, Dion Johnson, who I'd not met, never heard of, it came out of the blue, and he said he'd just met Larry Warren briefly, and Larry had told him about me, and he contacted me to say, would I get involved? And I'm thinking that this is like a producer wanting to get money commissioned to make a program. I didn't realize it was independent. So I said, well, you realize he's getting some grief at the moment. There's a campaign against him, disinformation, but it's a campaign. Are you aware of this? And he said, I'm aware of some of it. And I said, well, and I, again, thinking he's going to need to have some kind of hook to get TV companies to cough up the money to make the program. I said, well, the first thing I would do would ask Larry Warren to go on a lie detector polygraph, of which I had no experience in whatsoever, and I certainly didn't know any polygraph examiners. And basically, he said, okay, I'll get back to you. I didn't really think too much of it at that stage, but 2 weeks later, he rings me back up and he says, I've got Britain's top polygraph examiner available, and she's going to do it for free. It's something a bit different. She doesn't have any predisposition towards UFOs, but this is a little bit different. She's offered to do it for free. Would you like to get involved in that process? And, because we're going to film it, kind of thing. And I said, well, okay. It was a new experience. And I went down to London. And sure enough, I was there when they're setting up all the cameras, and I'm not going to reveal too much more. Suffice to say that that modern polygraph, which is 95 to 98% accurate, and as she would say, it's virtually impossible now with modern polygraph techniques and algorithms in computers, etc., and all the equipment that they use to actually beat them. Basically, nobody was in the room other than the examiner when the test was done. She's done over 2,000 tests. She's an American Anglophile, married to a British guy, lives in London, and essentially she was an expert in her field, the top person in her field. And it was a bit nerve-wracking for me when everybody left the house and the test took place. Half an hour later, we get called back, and he's passed with flying colours. Now, I ain't going to say anything more than that, because that is part of the documentary. And what I will say is that when that is covered in the film, I suspect many people in the audience will be in tears. That's all I'm going to say. But it's very emotional, and it's you can see why we've left it for the film. But that, in a sense, gave you the start point. And then he said, "No, I'm not doing it for a TV, get money. I want to do an independent, and I'd like you to be the lead researcher." Now, as soon as he said independent, I thought, well, I've worked on probably half a dozen Rendlesham documentaries, TV documentaries, and you do your bit, but you never have a say in the final edit, as it were. Whereas he was then essentially now saying to me, "Gary, you're going to be the lead researcher, co-writer. You can tell the truth, and we don't have to have a TV bias, a UFO bias. You can just put the fact out there." And that really is what drew me in, because to tell the truth, as it were, without a TV bias and silly, stupid music and all that kind of stuff, we could just put the facts together. Now, that excited me. I know we're coming up to a break, so we can discuss further, but suffice to say that that's what drew me in, the thought of being able to go back to day one from the incident, research everything, and anything that I thought was relevant will end up on camera. And that's essentially what we're going to do.
Well, I look forward to seeing the movie, and I have a few questions that I want to address with regard to Larry Warren when we get back and learning more. And I also want to hear about your trip to Moscow, because this is very important for all of us. I am Erica Lukes here with Gary Heseltine, who is the editor of UFO Truth magazine. So find that incredible researchers that are involved in all of this, great articles. We will be right back. Get in chat, ask questions. Feel free to call us. And this is a great interview. We will be back after the break.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at UFOclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51. Wait, that doesn't exist. This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
This landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Welcome back to the second half of UFO Classified. Erica Luke's always happy to be here. You can find me at UFOclassified.com, ericalukes.com, and also Facebook for UFO Classified. I am going to be updating my research, putting more and more of my time in the field, doing some pretty important stuff out there for all of you, sharing photos that I've taken all over the world, and also adding archives, electronic archives for you so you can do your own research. I mentioned at the beginning of the show, and I do this at every show, that I've got a very important archive here in Utah. It is open to the public. I just received another donation from an important researcher, and we'll be getting that, scanning that, and it is open for all of you. I want to thank my friends Barry Greenwood and Jan Aldrich and Gordon Lohr, who have been mentoring me throughout this whole process. They are really shining examples of what we need to do to preserve history and to look critically and thoughtfully at a subject that is so wrought with landmines. Speaking of that, I am here with Gary Heseltine, who has had to endure quite a bit with regard to his research into Rendlesham. He has a new movie out called Capel Green, and it's a feature-length documentary about the Rendlesham Forest incidents. And since word got out about this film, he and Larry and other people have been involved in some attacks that have gone on, and we've been talking a little bit about that and some of the great things that will be brought forward in the documentary. And so welcome back, Gary. I know that you're up late, and I know that your two babies are there probably wanting their dad to take them for a walk.
I assume when you say babies, you mean dogs, because I mean...
Yes, your babies, yes.
I know what you mean, but I'm sure the audience may be thinking, babies? He's going to take them for a walk?
Your babies.
Is this an American terminology?
Which is my terminology, because I'm an animal lover, so all my pets are my babies.
Just let me read. Something that's about 4 lines. It's only a short quote, but I think this speaks volumes. And we mentioned Peter earlier. This is what he said at the last time they were ever together. To conference, and Peter was speaking, and this was his closing comments as he headlined the conference, and he had a photograph of a young Larry Warren up on the screen. So this is what he said to the audience in closing. It's this 19-year-old kid who had more courage than all of us in this room, going up against the Ministry of Defence, the United States Air Force, the United States government, Her Majesty's government. He's been an expatriate in your country in Liverpool since 2000. I think he is an absolute hero. He continues to pay a price for what happened to him. And that was said in July of 2016, about a year before they went their separate ways. Now, does that sound like a man who doesn't believe in Larry Warren? I'm sorry, I think it does sound like a man that believes in Larry Warren after 28 years at that point. So anyway, back to whatever you want to ask me.
So what I want to ask you is, and I would be completely remiss if I didn't talk about this, Larry has been incoherent at times on some of his Facebook messages and very derogatory and has threatened people on Facebook. And, we talk about trolls and we all respond on Facebook certain ways, but how do you...
One of these things about the so-called death threat. Let's talk about a death threat. The death threat actually related to that conference that I just mentioned with Peter Robbins. And basically, the leader of the trolls, a female, basically had played a part in why Larry Warren hadn't spoken. And essentially what happened was that Larry was still going to be there in the audience, even though he wasn't speaking, because he was not allowed to speak because of comments raised by this other lady. And basically, what he'd said was, because he had his ex-wife and son there, and he basically said that if anybody threatens my family, I will jump down off the stage, literally speaking, and I will rip their throat out, which is a terrible phraseology. But what he basically said is, I'll do anything to protect my family. Now, whilst his language is stupid and wrong, basically the instinct that you would protect your children, I would protect my children if there was a direct threat, I think is the way the context was. That lady took that as supposedly took that as a death threat, but in reality that's a twist on the version of events, because the lady who had invited Larry Warren actually took it as a joke because it was said in an email, and she put it down to Larry just having a drink too many and saying something he perhaps shouldn't have said, but she took it as a joke at the time. That has then been spun by this other lady, the leader of the Trolls, into becoming a death threat. Well, if it was really a death threat, Larry would have been arrested, he would have been cautioned for it or whatever. That's never happened. In fact, of all the occasions that Larry Warren has supposedly done this, that and the other, Larry's never been arrested, never been interviewed, nothing has happened to him. So all the things about selling memorabilia, he's cheated on this and made thousands on that, and it's all memorabilia, hoax stuff. He's never been arrested or charged or anything for any offence. So how can you call somebody a liar, a con man, and cheat? When somebody says that to me in those terms, if somebody said, oh, that guy's a con man, it would immediately make me think that that guy or lady had a conviction for that offence. Well, Larry has no such convictions for any of those things. What he does do is occasionally get drunk, he gets hacked off, and he says really bloody stupid things, and I've absolutely told him to his face, I'm not going to condone that kind of language. It's irresponsible for somebody who is in the public eye, and he is in the public eye since 1983 when it all broke loose. So he has to watch what he says, but I guess he's human, and he's not what I would do, but he has made many silly comments, but that certainly was not the death threat that this lady would like to claim it was. It was treated as a joke by the lady who received that email, and was like he'd had one too many. Now, I doubt there's anybody in the world who's never had a drink too many and said something that they didn't later regret, and I'm sure he regrets that. But I think that's the way that the Trolls, or the leader of the Trolls, and the four principal people get involved in this who are trolling. They twist everything, and they're very clever, very articulate at times, and they twist everything. But in reality, their evidence never stood up to scrutiny. For example, I was sent by one of the four Trolls before this all kind of broke loose. And this guy sent me his handwriting examination of documents and tried to say that I have done some research into Larry's handwriting, and these documents to me look like he's copied them, and therefore he's manipulated military documents, i.e. he's fabricated, changed some of the things on the documents. And the first thing I said to him was, are you a police accredited handwriting expert? And he went, no. And I said, well, that's akin to me doing it. It don't count for anything. I couldn't, if you think about in a court of law, say somebody dies in a botched medical operation, and the doctors are giving testimony, you can only give expert testimony if you've got the qualifications in that trade. And this is a guy who's just privately said, oh, well, I think that handwriting. Well, I know from my police training that actually handwriting is a very difficult skill, and you need to get lots of qualifications to become a police accredited handwriting expert. You can't just do it because you've got a bit of a hobby. And so when I said this to him, and he said no, I said, well, essentially what you're sending me is worthless because it's not going to stand up in a court of law. If you'd have been a police accredited handwriting expert, then I'd be listening to you. But you're not. So it's akin to me just saying, that's my neighbour's writing. It's not good enough. So that's the extent of their evidence in terms of handwriting. It doesn't stack up. And all the other stuff, when I looked into it, doesn't stack up. And so that's where you get. So this may have preempted some of your questions, because all the things, and I think this is why Peter, going back to Peter Robbins, I think this is why Peter, who was not a policeman, did not have years of police experience at looking at evidence and what would stand up in a court of law. Not his fault. I'm not criticising him for that at all. But I think when he was initially shown supposedly all these things that Larry had done, it got him thinking, well, perhaps he did lie about this, perhaps he did lie about that. And I think that is the problem that occurred. And it was before I became involved in this process. So I was unaware that he was being approached by these people. But I think privately that is what's happened, and that he thought, Christ, there's all this stuff over here. And it made him, and I've heard him on several radio shows since they kind of broke away from each other, where he has said he's gone back. But now it's kind of gone a bit silly, because literally Peter has gone so the other way that it's like everything almost that they ever did together was a lie. Well, I'm sorry, body language, common sense, you cannot write 3 books about somebody and know them for 28 years without knowing them pretty well. And so for me, it doesn't stack up. So I think, in a sense, I think he was kind of bullied. He thought that Larry was going down for these things that looked persuasive to him, who did not have an evidential eye in reality. And I think he kind of jumped ship, and that is for him to answer. But realistically, the evidence doesn't stack up.
And thank you for clarifying that. And I will say that I will reach out to Peter to get his response on this. I think that's important to hear that. So with regard to Larry, has he ever publicly gone on record to clarify some of his Facebook posts?
Well, in terms of derogatory comments or...
Right. Some of his drunken rantings. I mean, I think that would be really important for him to go on record and clear that up, to try to get some of some of the stuff that's happening, maybe diffuse that situation.
To be honest, I don't know for certain. Suffice to say that since I've been involved, he rarely makes any comment now. And he has kind of weaned himself off Facebook. But I think there's no two ways about it. I'm not going to condone anybody, whoever it is, friend, foe, or anybody. I'm not going to condone anybody who uses ridiculous language and any kind of threatening behaviour, verbal or anything. There's no excuse for that. And I'm an advocate of that there should be no kind of verbal personal abuse, etc., etc. That's totally wrong. He has clearly made comments that are ill-judged, especially when he'd had a drink. Now, I think he has addressed many of those things, and I know that for a fact that, because I've become involved in certain things, that maybe only a month ago we released a video where we talk about music memorabilia, we talk about various documents, and we have the originals there. We have supposedly is a great Photoshop, putting himself along stars and putting himself into Photoshop, putting himself alongside stars. Well, we produced the original photographs from years ago with the old Kodak and whatever on the background, the film, the clearly pre-digital area, not cropped, and he really didn't know these people. And we'll discuss that in the film as well. That's all covered. So that there is a video out there, and I can send you a link to that video. I think you've actually got it in your private message already. But
I do, yes.
About a month ago. And we addressed a lot of these issues. But certainly, I think he has. But I can't say for certain, because I can't think of a particular Facebook post where he's say, I'm sorry for doing this. I think what he does say is basically people have been at him for a long time prior to my getting involved, and I think, like anybody else, sometimes you're going to bite back because you're fed up. But what I'm saying is that there's no excuse, and if he hasn't apologised, he should apologise because of those misunderstandings and whatever. There's no excuse for that kind of behaviour, and I've told him that. Absolutely no excuse. But the positive that's come out of that is a lot more considered now, and he very rarely goes on Facebook now at all. And he knows that he shouldn't say those things. But obviously he's a grown man, and I can't stop him physically saying whatever he wants to say.
Well, and thank you for clarifying that. I think that's important. I think, as both of us know, there is a lot of, you get all of these personalities involved, and then you get outside influences, and it's not a healthy community, especially when you were subject to such traumatic sightings.
But let's put this in perspective, and I'm not making any excuses for anything he said in the past that was stupid, and I say that to his face. It's stupid, and you shouldn't do it. But I always do think that there is context, and the context is, imagine a world where every day you are receiving messages, people are telling you messages, that people are calling you an effing this and effing that, you are being called a liar, a con man, all manner of things every day for 2-3 years now. Would you not get a little bit hacked off sometimes? I think you would now and again. It wouldn't be normal. But what I'm saying is you can't, certainly as a public figure, go on the air and say what some of the things he said. That is wrong. And so there's no condoning that. But the context is, I've personally now had over 2 years of almost daily abuse from this very small section. Now, I ignore it now. But initially when you get it, it's not nice to be called this, that and the other, and all these lies put out about you just because you have a different point of view. And my argument would be, is there's a massive, what I call a troll is somebody who uses victim personal abuse. There's one thing saying, that's incorrect, no, you're not right. In society, we live in a world where we will disagree on politics and religion. They're the two big things where people kind of say, have this rule that politics and religion are your own kind of thing. And you kind of end up in a discussion where you say, well, okay, I respect your point of view. I don't agree with it, but we'll agree to disagree. And then you move on and you stay friends. That's the civilized way to do it. But unfortunately, with this group of people, and in particular one person, this lady, the leader of the Trolls, she was his #1 fan for 9 years. She wasn't an ordinary fan. She was obsessive. She rang radio shows in the reverse of what she's doing now. She rang radio shows and said, get him on, he's the best guy, Obsessive, in my opinion. And I think most people, and many other people, have described her as obsessive. And then suddenly something happens, which we don't really know what, and then suddenly she goes from being his #1 fan to his #1 hater, out on a mission to destroy him. Well, I don't think that is a very a logical thing to go from 180 to flip 180 degrees the other way. It's from one extreme to the other. Most people in life are like that. And yes, you could have disagreed with him, they could have a fallout, but not to start then making personal abuse. He's an F in this, he's an F in that. That's where I draw the line. It's in life we have total disagreements. I mean, Christ, in Britain at the moment, we are gridlocked over Brexit, leaving the European Union. You would not believe the arguments that's causing. But in the end, we've got to agree to disagree. And we have to be civilized. We should never there's no circumstance, whatever the subject, there is no circumstance that says that it's all right for you to be called an F in this and an F in that. If you have to resort to that kind of abuse, you are onto a loser, and you should not actually be allowed on Facebook to be able to do that. But unfortunately, Facebook is a platform that's probably outgrown itself too quickly, and it's 5 years behind where it should be legislative in policing these kind of abuses. I mean, at the extreme, young girls, young teenagers have been driven to suicide, and it's happened many, many times all around the world where social media is being used to bully people. That should not be allowed to happen, and it's a much wider issue than just Larry Warren and ufology. It's across the board. None of what I call trolling is victim personal abuse. And unfortunately, let me just bring this in. Nick Pope, who I've been affable with for many, many years, because of this documentary, he is now saying I should be arrested. But recently, only last week, I received an email where he's saying that I've put on weight, and he said I've eaten Larry Warren. Now, that's the inference, that I'm fat and I've eaten Larry Warren. Now, does that sound like the kind of person that should be saying that kind of thing? Well, that's how far it's gone from his side of things. Now, I will never respond in kind like that because it's wrong. I'm absolutely vehemently against any kind of abuse. But that says to me that the people who were sought out to destroy Larry Warren, myself for backing him up, and the makers of Capel Green, they are fearful of what we're going to reveal. And that says to me, Gary, carry on.
And thank you very, very much. And I have to ask you, because it's interesting to me that this area, the east coast of England, there have been a lot of biological and chemical weapons testing in the past. It is much like an area here in Utah called Dugway Proving Ground. Could there be any link to what happened in Rendlesham? Would that be military testing?
For what happened to the soldiers?
Yes.
To the airmen and ladies? Then I would say no, not in my opinion. And this will be borne out in the documentary. It had always, prior to getting involved in this documentary, I'd been involved with Colonel Holt for 7 years in a collaboration writing a film script. That was the idea. I, in a sense, fell out with him because he was attacking Larry Warren without producing the evidence. The source of that evidence was the lady who we've been talking about. I can prove that. That's all in the Winter is Here document. But suffice to say that the East Anglia area was one of the early radar testing, which was new technology. There are many ghost witches kind of stories. It's an area steeped in folklore, and of course, yes, there isn't a nuclear element there with testing and whatever. But as the documentary will show, there are many UFO events, and that's the only way you can describe them. When you are seeing red basketball objects next to military installations, when we're looking at over a dozen incidents over those few days, not just 3 or 4 that we've got this perceived idea as to how many there are actually many incidents, and there are also several key incidents in the year leading up to the late December sightings, i.e. throughout 1980. So the documentary will highlight for the first time on camera sightings in February, June, and November.
This will be interesting, and we're going to finish that when we get back for our last break. I'm Erica Lukes here at the Gary Heseltine. Stick around. We've got one more section, and go to ufoclassified.com. I'll be posting links with regard to the movie and much, much more. We'll catch you on the other side of the break.
Stand by.
This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
With Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
Okay, men. This is your time. Maybe you didn't choose this, but you're here now. You're gonna go out there and be an all-star caregiver. It's up to you. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna go grocery shopping, cook, clean, be there emotionally and physically. You gotta dig deeper. Drive them to physical therapy, doctor's appointments. Don't you forget about the pharmacy. No, you won't. Because that's what caregivers do. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. This is your time to show the world, your family, and yourself that you're tougher than tough. Now go out there and be the best caregiver this world has ever seen.
Caregiving is tougher than tough. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
30 seconds and counting.
Broadcasting to you from another planet, beaming you a world of entertainment.
This is the world-famous KCOR. Now listen live online at KCORradio.com.
I like everything about this station.
When do I listen? Like 24 hours a day.
It's my favorite station. I just love the music. It keeps me going at work.
There is a world outside that which we live in. A realm where fact and fiction collide. The Paradigm Matrix. The Paradigm Matrix. Hosted by Willie Miranda. Every Friday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern.
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us, even now in this very room.
The 1 hour show that will surely leave you hanging on the edge of the rabbit hole. The Paradigm Matrix explores a universe of topics from UFOs, cryptozoology, conspiracies, as well as all things paranormal.
Enter a world of the twisted and deformed.
Friday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. The Paradigm Matrix. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network, where fact and fiction collide.
Here's what happened on the last episode of Three Guys, No Ties.
Well, a boozy elderly woman allegedly mooed at Florida police and called an officer a pig. Before she was, of course, busted for DUI charges. Joanne, she's 73 of Massachusetts, was jailed. What, Dave?
Almost spit copter through my nose. 73.
73. Like, what are they going to do to me? What are they going to do? Arrest me? I'm 73. Kiss my ass.
Three Guys, No Ties. Wednesday nights, 7 to 9 Pacific on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
You're listening to
UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back and happy Fantopia Friday. Willie Miranda will be up after my show. I want to thank all of my listeners for getting into chat, for asking questions, for getting information out about UFO Classified. Please find me at ufoclassified.com, ericalukes.com, or you can find me on Facebook. Send me messages. I really appreciate hearing from people all over the world, hearing about your sightings, and also the support that I get from people who donate to the show and spend their time getting my archives uploaded to YouTube. That means the world to me. I couldn't do this without you. I don't have a big backing. I don't seek marketing money. I just do this for the love of it and because it is the most important thing that I will ever do with my life. I am here tonight with Gary Heseltine, who is staying up, and it is way past my bedtime. If I were in the UK, it would be way past my bedtime, but clearly he is, that's the way you roll, Gary.
I'm
thank you.
I'm pretty nocturnal, to be fair, so it stayed up till 2 or 3 is fine.
Oh Lord, and I have to say there are a few things that I want to cover, and one of them is your trip to Moscow. And I want to just mention my friend who is over in the UK also, who wrote a book on remote viewing UFOs and the visitors, Tunde Antarase, who brings up the fact that he remote viewed Rendlesham and that he felt that this was a military experiment, and there are others who have voiced that type of opinion. And when I look at Dugway Proving Ground and some of the witness reports that I've collected in that area, I have to wonder if there wasn't something like that involved in Rendlesham, but you and others that were there feel differently about that.
Well, the first thing you've got to remember that if it was a military kind of psyop is that these were people guarding nuclear weapons and they were live armed. I was for 6 years in the Royal Air Force Police, and for 3 of my 6 years, I guarded 2 nuclear bases doing exactly the same job. So I think I can speak from a unique perspective here, having done the same job as what those American servicemen did. And you would not, under any circumstances whatsoever, mess with people who are armed to the teeth with automatic rifles, machine guns and sidearms. You just wouldn't do it. It's too dangerous and people get hurt. Was there any kind of military connection to this? I don't think so. And I think, as the documentary will show, none of the objects are seen could in any way be described in any fashion other than being a UFO, unconventional shape, strange, weird objects that are clearly under intelligent control, doing intelligent things, but do not have any kind of appearance of what we would consider a man-made object. So my personal belief is, and I've looked at all through the evidence, that there's nothing that says to me that this was a military operation.
Okay, thank you for saying that, and it's just also curious how this all. Oh my gosh, there's so many questions. The more you research this,
I think the thing, Erica, that is, if you're a skeptic to UFOs, and there are many skeptics out to UFOs, and skeptics live in the world of generalizations without actually looking at the best evidence. That's the difference, is that they take a stance and they don't really look at the best evidence and cannot process the best evidence. Then I would say that when people start coming out with PSYOP, that it's, I don't know, it's meteorological and all those things, these people cannot get their head around that there's ET contact going on. And so they have a predisposition to say it can't be, so it isn't, which is a classic Stanton Friedman phrase. And so they fit their agenda to say that this can't be, so it isn't. And so they work up a narrative that says it can't be. And it's kind of, if you think of, we were talking about the Project Blue Book TV series, which is great entertainment, but so far away from reality, untrue, but it's kind of pro-ET in a strange kind of way, because Blue Book never was pro-ET. So it's a real contradiction. But what I'm saying is that if you have got the predisposition to say you do not believe, then you will find a narrative, an excuse. And I've heard people will go, well, I think I can explain the third night that it was an East German test aircraft that landed in the forest. Well, then I'd say, well, okay, but what about the other 10 incidents that night? That's what I'd say.
Right.
So do you see what I mean? That it doesn't stack up. So when you look at the whole thing, I would estimate that there's between 15 and 20 events that we're now aware of over those few days involving UFOs. The only description you could call them is UFOs. That's a lot. Well, how many do we think about? The Holt Night, the Peniston Burrows, landed craft, and that's basically it. Maybe Larry Warren, if he was in a documentary. Larry Warren has been largely sidelined because of the way the case has been allowed to be manipulated. Think about this as a strange thing as well. If you were an investigator of a case, generally the witnesses to the events do not become the investigators. Would you agree with that, Erica?
Right. Yes.
Right. Well, unfortunately, in Rendlesham, we've got 3 different factions who are all witnesses, who have all now dominated the case for the last 15 years. And so it will be, oh, well, I don't want that person on that documentary if I'm going to get involved in it. No, I don't want him appearing on that program. He's a charlatan. I don't want him on it. I don't know, no. So that's the way it's gone. And this is why when I've talked to witnesses who still will not come forward, but have got stories to tell, who I have talked to privately over this last 18 months, and they will say that's what they dislike, is in a sense that it's all become about Peniston, Burrows and Holt.
Right.
It really.
Well, and there are people that are making money, on the circuits.
But the bottom line is, Erica, it really should be for the mainstream media. It should be, in theory, just about putting the facts out there. But as you and I well know, having worked on TV documentaries, they make entertainment. They don't necessarily tell you all of the information. And that is the problem. But in a sense, most documentaries are now handed over to Colonel Holt. Who do you want to be in this with, Charles? I'll have him. Oh, yes, we'll have him.
Yeah, I mean, it's so political, and it is. We see the same thing over here, and unfortunately, a handful of people in MUFON, unfortunately, are giving production companies, you can have this person or that person, which is unfortunate. I mean, there's some very negative, unprofessional things going on. And I have to just say, because we've got about 15 minutes left, and I really, really want to ask you about what took place in Russia and why. Tell us why you went to Moscow.
Okay, quickly, what happened was, I think, the first week of September, maybe the last week of August 2018, I get an email out from the blue, as it were, from Don Schmidt, who I've met many times, but didn't know particularly well, but I'd met him several times over the years. And he basically said, I've recommended you to go to Moscow for what could be a new disclosure initiative that's going to be put together by what was Chinese and Russians. And it's in Moscow. So straight away, Moscow is a place, because of my age and the Cold War, and it was always the place you couldn't go to unless you were a spy kind of thing, that I instantly thought, right, I'd really love to go to Moscow. Plus I knew it was a beautiful city and I like architecture. So basically, I ended up going to Moscow with what turned out to be Don and myself, and 6-7 other national representatives to have a tentative first meeting with a Chinese ufologist, and basically he'd got an idea to create, in simple terms, it's still an ongoing process, so I can't say too much, but essentially it was to create a United Nations style multinational forum of UFO experts, in a sense, experts from each country, a big kind of, you think of the big round table of United Nations, that kind of scenario that recognized UFO experts from countries all around the world would come together to try to, in a sense, promote the idea that ET contact has been proven. We don't have the craft that we can show you. We don't have the alien body to prove it conclusively, but based on a circumstantial evidence case from the best cases from around the world, if you think of pilots, astronauts, air traffic controllers, those kind of people, the best evidence from around the world, there's a proportion of UFO sightings that are clearly or point towards an ET contact, not least the abduction field as well, and the many millions who claim to have been abducted. So on that basis, it was getting, the idea is to get so many countries together, and I think when you get a minimum of 30 national representatives, 30 countries represented, you can then approach the United Nations, UNESCO, to be recognised as a world governing body. And I think that's the process where we're going, but it was an early preliminary meeting to see what our thoughts were. Would we want to get involved? And I, in a sense, was representing the United Kingdom, was basically to say, well, I've always wanted to promote the politicising of the UFO significance of what's really going on when you take away the bias and if you just looked at the best evidence, there really is a case to answer. And basically, from that point of view, further meetings are planned. It's very early days, but we're in the process of hopefully creating that initial step of 30 countries. We're well on the way to getting the numbers that we can get recognised. I can't say too much more because I am heavily involved in that process, but I can tell you that it's an ongoing process, and it's fully funded by the Chinese, not by the Russians.
And so I have to ask, how were the experts from each country picked? I mean, obviously Don Schmidt reached out to you. What was the criteria, and who made?
well, I guess this is an emotive, subjective thing, but it was a question of, like Roberto Pinotti is Italian. I've met Roberto many times. He was one of the two people that were initially approaching what they thought were suitable national candidates. So I guess the real question is you'd have to ask them. But from my point of view, if you're asked by your peers to represent your country, then it was a real thrill and an honour to do so. And that's the way it's gone. So the way that we have gone about trying to recruit, as it were, the 30 national representatives, is we have asked various people who know all these. You know, in the UFO field yourself who are the good people, the bad people, the not so good people. So the good people, you would be recommending to people and say, that's a good researcher, blah, blah, blah. And so basically it's been like led by a peer group of people who say, these are good guys, approach this guy, see if they're willing to take part. And that's the way it's going, and it's pretty much picked itself so far. But what I will say is that everyone has to sign an oath to become the national delegate that says that the ET case has been proven on a circumstantial evidence basis case, and that it's now time to talk about contact and introduce a much more meaningful discussion politically on that front, and in a sense move the subject forward, because I don't think historically the UFO field internationally has been very good at organising themselves and presenting the best evidence and whatever. So I think if we get 30 countries initially to come together, and I'm confident we'll do that pretty soon, then that will be a major breakthrough anyway, because we will have never had 30 like-minded people signing an oath to that effect who are willing to state that publicly, which is what they must do to become a national delegate.
And so the Chinese are the leaders of this effort, and so who are the people that are specifically, or the group that is specifically behind this organization or effort? Right.
Well, at this stage, I'm not going to answer that for obvious reasons. That it's still in its formative stages. What I can say is that it's an initiative put forward by a Chinese researcher that is funded, we believe, by the Chinese, and that's all I'm going to say at that point, because there are many questions that I have. There are many questions that Don has, and we will, at some point this year, probably May, June time, be hopefully going to China to have a more formal discussion to ask all these questions. As I say, I can't say too much because it's so preliminary, but the idea is that we were asked to see if we can get 30 countries to come together. We're well on the way to doing that. I think from a personal point of view, it's better to be involved in that process at this stage and see, better to be in the process that if it does lead to some kind of disclosure initiative, then that could only be a good thing. So it's better to be on the inside and let's see where this goes. But it's very early days, so hence I can't really say too much. But hopefully May, June time, so many people who are national delegates who've been identified already will go to China, because that's where it's going to be based, the headquarters. So they're putting up the money, so why not?
Well, and this will be very interesting to watch. And so when you went there, and how many days were you there?
I was there 5 days, but the actual meeting the Chinese was like a 3-day period. I got there 2 days early so I could do some sightseeing.
Oh, how fun. I bet that was absolutely beautiful. You each gave a presentation then, I'm assuming?
No. In the end, we didn't give any presentations. There were 9 delegates there to meet with the leader of the Chinese who was promoting the idea. We sat around a table and we had some initial discussions and ironed out some principles of our involvement. And basically from that, it was, well, let's see if we can keep this going, and then we will have a more formal meeting, hopefully in China, in the next few months. And that'll be the one, I think, because then I'll be able to answer a few more questions that I can't answer now. So there's no point in me speculating on things I actually don't know.
Right. No, and this is, this is obviously exciting, and it's something.
Well, I think it's very exciting, and it may end up going nowhere, but I think provisionally it sounds very exciting, and it's good to be a part of what may turn out to be a major step forward.
Absolutely. And do you feel, because in my research I'm finding that obviously intelligence, they will set up meetings and bring in great minds to try to get information, especially other countries, to try to find out about military advancements each country is making. Did you find that there was any element of that they were trying to bring you together to get some sort of upper hand on the United States?
No. All I can say is, from my perspective, I didn't hear anything, see anything, but it was high level. When we were there were the Chinese entourage was large, and we met with Soviet cosmonauts and military officials. So this was initially a joint Russian kind of meeting. But it turns out that it's the Chinese that are going to be putting all the money in. Quite where it's coming from, I don't know, so I can't answer the question. Suffice to say is that I will know a lot more, hopefully, that I can report back in time.
That's awesome. That is wonderful, and I have to what an adventure to go to Moscow, to see the history, to see some of the architecture, the art. I mean, it's an absolutely stunning city. It must have been a great trip.
It was fantastic. I know that time is short, but I wanted to give you a little special offer to your listeners, if you'll allow.
Yes, please. Absolutely.
Right. The first 50 people that subscribe online to the magazine, the first 50 people, I will give them every issue of the magazine to date, 35 issues, as a free bonus. How's that?
I love that. And your magazine is the best. I love it. I love reading it. You have great researchers, people that we don't necessarily hear from. And I appreciate that. And we've got, 2 more minutes before the show ends, but you have been informed about all of the things that are going on in America, and specifically with regard to MUFON. What are your thoughts about MUFON as an organization? Is this productive? What do you see when you're looking at it from your point of view?
Obviously, I'm not that familiar with MUFON and its inner workings, but from what I can see, and having had Chris Cogswell write an article in UFO Truth magazine, James Clarkson wrote an article as to why they left MUFON, you left MUFON. There fundamentally seems to be a lot of things wrong, and I can maybe characterize that in one thing. I have nothing against the likes of Corey Goode, but there is no corroboration to say that he worked on Mars for however long as a military soldier from a police point of view, and yet he's at the top table at a MUFON conference. Now, if we're talking about credibility, where does that evidential credibility go there? Straight away, you are inviting somebody with no corroboration, no evidence to present onto your top table alongside well-esteemed researchers who've got a lifetime of dedication to UFO research. I think that fundamentally strikes a wrong chord. I think it's wrong that you can have an inner circle that pays, $5,000, and they get different executive kind of privileges, that they're treated differently. I think that was wrong. I think John Ventura, I was initially supposed to speak 18 months ago. He made a racist comment. I unfriended him, sent him an email saying, I ain't going to speak at your conference. What you did was wrong. It was racist. It's unforgivable in this modern age. You should not have said that. You were wrong. But then he didn't get kicked out of MUFON, not for a long time. It wasn't dealt with by the leadership swiftly, and he should have been excommunicated straight away out of MUFON. But it didn't happen, and he's still there in the background, I believe, because he's one of these people that makes a bit of money. That does not do MUFON's credibility any good, because you cannot allow those things to happen. And
thank you. For somebody who's been doing research for a long time, I'm sure, especially when you're over in the UK, you look at some of these goings-ons, and all of these things, unfortunately, undermine what, at the end of the day, we're trying to put out there, and we're doing all of this, sacrificing relationships, money, all sorts of things, because we believe that this is an important subject. And to me, and like you've stated, that it doesn't help when you've got a situation like this. So thank you. And okay, so give us the details. Where can we? Obviously, we've talked about this, but tell us again. Find out more about the movie, and then also your magazine, and keep up to date with your conference.
Right. Okay. Don't forget that if you see all the links, there are 4 trailers that we've put out for the Capel Green movie. It's in post-production now. We'll hopefully get it released in May, June, July time. It's because we've got so much material to get through, over 50 interviews, a lot of material, that we ought to condense it down. So the website is www.capelgreen, one word, CAPEL, green, one word, capelgreen.co.uk. There's 4 trailers. I think you're going to put up the links for me on your website. And the magazine, UFO Truth magazine, is an easy 96 pages featuring articles by many of the world's leading researchers, especially from around the world, English-speaking researchers from all around the world. And that is www.ufotruthmagazine, written all as one, .co.uk. And that special offer, just to give it you before we go, is the first 50 people that subscribe. I will send you every issue that we've done in the 5 years, almost 6 years it's been going, since 2013. So you'll get 35. You'll get the initial issue for subscribing, and then you'll get 34 other issues sent to you free. The first 50. So get subscribed.
That's amazing. That is amazing, and that's a great offer, so I really encourage my listeners to get in there and do that. Gary, it is always wonderful to have you on my show, and I wish you the best of luck, and I hope when the film is released that maybe we can get you and Peter here and we can talk about some things, but I will keep everybody posted. Thank you for staying up late. I'm Erica Lukes here, and stick around for Willie Miranda, who's going to have Ronnie LeBlanc on the show from Monsterland. I love Ronnie. Fabulous. So stick around. It's going to be a great night. Be safe, and we will catch you next week. And trust me, next week might be a really, really good show.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at ufoclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting